Hello and welcome. You're watching The Big Fight, a show that is young at 23, the oldest running debate show on Indian news television. I'm Sanket Upadhyay. This whole week was the budget week. Budget 2023 is here. And the forecast and the prediction, particularly within the Bharatiya Janata Party, is that this will propel them into an election year. So Budget 2023 will have its impact in election 2024. Will that happen or not? Or has that been a prime consideration when this budget was drafted or made? Look at the capital expenditure. It has been increased. It is also being said that the new tax regime is going to swing things in favor of the BJP. Officially, if you speak to them, they will say, don't look at these things with the prism of elections. There are two totally different things. There is another major concern. At a time when there are global recession fears, can this budget help India stay afloat and perhaps also be a shining star? How is this budget being politically perceived? Let's begin the political discussion first. I have with me in the studio Shama Mohammed of the Congress Party. Thank you very much for joining us. I think this is the first time you're coming here post the coronavirus.
Correct,
yes.
correct.
So welcome to the studio. Rajat Sethi is also here, political analyst and also an economist. And in full disclosure, I must say that your views tend to lean towards the government.
Yep.
Right? Okay. We also have Riju Datta. He is the spokesperson of the Trinamool Congress. He's joining us from Kolkata. Thank you very much. I want to start by asking you, Rajat Sethi, what do you think works in this budget?
I think the biggest message of this budget is continuity, led by the Prime Minister's vision that, elections will come and go. Budgets shouldn't be determined by elections, and this tendency of the politicians to always look for revenue expenditure right before the budget, have this revenue economics, spread money, throw money around, instead of investing on the foundations of our growth. That has been shunned away with. Continuity is the message. Building the future, laying the foundations for the future of the country has been the message. And I think going forward, we'll see spur in growth in jobs as well. We will see focus on futuristic sectors like IT and artificial intelligence and IoT and all of those sectors. And also the startup sector, which will continue to get support from the government that is needed. Along with that, the middle class, which had its own set of issues for the past few years, not getting any changes in the tax slab structure, that also has been tinkered now to their advantage. So all in all, well balanced. Essentially, budgeting is a zero-sum game. Some sectors will gain and some will lose. It's the art with which you balance this budget is what will give you good marks.
And revise it considering the requirement.
I mean, as a household, if we define budgets for our household expenditure also, we keep changing it depending on any outlier event. Tomorrow, if the war escalates, your triple F, which is food, fuel and fertilizers, they will go off the roof. The same government will also have to provision enough elbow room if things go south. How do you account for it? What are the sectors eventually where you reduce the expenditure? So it's a dynamic process.
Okay.
This budget is only the policy intent of the government, which will keep changing over the year.
Dr. Mohammed.
See, he said one point about capex. Now, that is good when your private investments are down. I agree with him. But what is the issue at this point? The biggest issue, Sanket, is the price rise, is the unemployment. Now, the capex thing is not immediate. It will happen. Just like they said they're going to start smart cities. How many smart cities have come up? The question is none. Zilch. 2022 farmer income double, not happen. So like you said, there are promises. Now I, as a person or people out there, would have wanted your petrol price and diesel prices to have gone down, because you are buying 30% discounted oil from Russia. That is what is happening. The Reliance Industries are refining it and exporting it. Why don't you give it back to the people? That is one. The other thing is the GST, the indirect tax, which is, as we know, the Oxfam report said that 1% holds more than 50% of the wealth, and the 50% of our people pay 64% of the GST, whereas these people, the rich, only pay 3%. So my thing is that if the GST on all those 5% GST on food, if it was made zero, many things which are at 18%, like sharpeners, pencils, which education with children, you put it down. All these are important things that the GST is controlled, which you haven't. And there's nothing much on health and farmers. That's the other one where I didn't see anything. Now, for example, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Beem Yojana last year, 22-23 was 15,500 crore. This time it is 13,625 crore, down by 12%. The other one, Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana, 10,433 crore, is this year 7,050 crore. And the most important after COVID, what did we see? Manrega. Manrega, which they criticized a lot, worked for the poor very well.
During COVID?
During COVID and even after COVID. You know, it's still working very well. But what do we see? From 73,000 crore, it's gone down to 60,000 crore. So this is what my thing is. It is all good to have a vision of capex and all those are very good. But at this time, India is reeling under unemployment, price rise, which you need to look into. And Manrega
so that buffer was very important.
And also the tax, which I want to put, can I just tell us that you talked about that 7 lakh, above 7 lakh, I mean, up to 7 lakh, you don't need to pay tax. But the old thing, what you had is, you had exemptions. In LIC, you had exemptions with the rentals, you had exemptions with the pension, which you will not have. So remember, that is, Indians don't have something called social security. Now, that social security will go with this, because when you go to the new regime, you don't get that. And the other thing is, the new regime of, they start in 2020. Why doesn't the government give us the data on how many people have shifted from the old to the new? Okay. That means it shows what it's doing.
I'll come to you. You can perhaps explain and rebut whatever Dr. Mohammed has said. But Riju Datta, very interestingly, Manrega was mentioned by Dr. Mohammed. And my question to you is on the Rural Employment Guarantee Act. The West Bengal government is in a state of war, I would say, with the central government over the release of Manrega funds. Right? At a time like this, those funds have been, the allocation has been reduced. Now, in all fairness, one must also acknowledge that last time, while the budgeted amount was 73,000 crores, it was revised to 89,400 crores. But this time around, the budgeted amount itself has gone down by 13,000 crores. I don't know how much it will be revised to. But in absolute terms, the budget estimate has been reduced. Do you think that the need for Manrega is over on the ground?
See, Sanket, let me be very blunt about it. In India, 70% of India is rural, and India is still a predominantly agriculture-based country. And in both the sectors, in Manrega as well as agriculture, there is no benefit in this budget. In Kisan, if you want to do something for the farmers, you could have fixed the MSP, but you have overlooked it completely by giving this cock and bull story about capex and everything. This entire budget is in future tense. Hoga karenge. But what are you doing now? What will happen to India in 35, 47, 57? Fair enough, we will look into it. But what are you doing in 2023? And the Manrega, you revised the budget in Manrega during COVID because it was the only way for people to survive in rural India, which makes up 70% of India. And now you are saying it's a demand-based thing. Its demand has gone down. But if the demand has gone down for Manrega, have you provided employment? Have you given 16 crore jobs? You are making 4 years agniveers. There are no jobs also in the government sector. So how will people sustain? It is the fundamental duty of the central government to provide government jobs to the youth of this country. So there is nothing for the youth, nothing for the farmers, nothing for the middle class. This budget is a opportunist budget rather than a futuristic budget, and it is only for the rich and by the rich. Okay. There is nothing for the middle class.
Okay, Rajat Sethi, your response first to Dr. Shama Mohammed and then Riju Datta.
Yeah, I think
he speaks about the Manrega cut. She's talking about other issues as well.
Yeah, so I've noted these points down. First point, which is the biggest elephant in the room, is Manrega. So let me address that. If you look at various analyses that have come around Manrega, the allocation has gone down, but the trend line that the BJP government here has maintained is that Manrega-based allocation cannot be the foundational scheme of growing India. This is not aspirational scheme. This is not something, it can be a makeshift solution.
It is still a core of the core scheme for the government.
Don't go by the theoretical classification of sectors. The government's intent shows what is core. The core is Jal Jeevan.
Right now.
Yeah, no, I'll explain, ma'am.
You need it right now.
Yeah, so
it's essential for the poor.
Well, what has happened is, see, look at Manrega. Between two growing cycles, whenever the agricultural labor is free, they ask for jobs, Manrega jobs and all, and that is where you provide these Manrega jobs. Essentially what has happened is, and I've worked with several state governments also, and I can tell you the demand for Manrega jobs has also come down, number one. Number two, what has happened is there are other schemes which are in the rural areas. For example, the Jal Jeevan scheme. pipes have to be laid down, holes have to be dug in. There the allocation has gone up. It is the same agricultural labor which should be deployed there to do that same work. Then look at PM Awas Yojana. Over there as well.
One moment.
That's also a rural scheme, by the way. Who is going to build those houses? You require masons which are based in the urban masons are not going to go to rural areas to build those. So essentially, you're moving those labor and focusing them on building more productive assets instead of, as you said in Hindi channel also, ki gadda khota, gadda bhara. That scheme has been, that focus has been shifted and diverted.
That, by the way, the Prime Minister said.
No, of course, and that has been the intent. And this is why there has to be tapering of this scheme eventually.
Why the GST on 5% on this food? What about the petrol price and diesel? Yes, about 1,000.
And
when we were leaving, it was 424. Now $80 a barrel, $86 a barrel last year. Why are you not? Milk prices have gone up. And also, one last point, 7% is what they predict, isn't it? The growth. Now, I'm asking...
6 to 6.8.
No, but in the budget speech, it was 7. That is what
IMF...
Economic said. But what she said is 7%.
Let me add
one more thing. My question is, when there is a recession predicted all over the world, how are they getting this figure is what my question. Is it another one of their fads going on? Okay. How do they get this figure when the whole world is getting into recession?
Let's ask him.
That is where...
Basic question. Space to answer. There is bombarding by questions.
I am asking you. Look, I am looking at you.
Talk about why the GST has not gone down.
Oh my God.
My question is, how are you so confident that this budget and in your own admission, the fiscal prudence of this government will help you stay afloat or perform even better at a time when there is global recession, fear?
Right. So, first things first. GST is not the subject area of a fiscal policy of the government of India. GST belongs to the GST Council. It's a federal structure. Please, I would request Dr. Shama Mohammed to request the Congress ruled states and their finance minister to raise this voice in the GST Council. It is imprudent to talk about that topic when we're talking budget. It just does not make sense. That's point number one. Number two, around, you were talking about the growth numbers. Let me tell you, when you look at investments and the investment intent of the government, you need to understand what are the priority areas where the money is going into, is flowing into, and what are the multiplier effects you're going to have. There are multiple ways of spending, right? You could have spent it on a scheme like Manrega, which will have very few multiplier effects. As Dr. Montek Singh has also repeatedly mentioned, that if you put it into any of the social sector and look at the multiplier effect there, versus the multiplier in infrastructure, it is always the multiplier in infrastructure which wins.
Okay.
So this is where, you keep pressing the pedal onto the infrastructure, you will see results coming in terms of jobs, in terms of growth, and you will beat. And India's private consumption in economic survey says that it has gone up by 55%. That is it's a gigantic number. Even if our exports slow down because of the global turmoil, we will stay afloat.
No, where is the money? He says it's gone up. I don't see any demand in the market.
That's why.
One more thing is, he said about the GST Council, that 80% of the power is with, the way they've done it, is with the central government. Of course, they can change things. There is no consensus happening there. You can definitely put down the GST. Milk prices just after budget by 3. How are children supposed to get nutrition? What about the portion? That also has gone down when we are 101 out of 116 in the global hunger index. And the children are not supported. So where are we heading? I mean, nothing. Women got nothing. In the labor force, we are below women. Participation in the labor force, we are below Pakistan and the previous Afghanistan government before the Taliban came in.
Let's get a response on that quickly. I'm running out of time.
Where are we? And you haven't told us about the portion thing.
Quickly.
Why are we, when we are World Hunger Index, we are 101
so you've
out of
asked
116.
that question. Let's get in a reply.
He's not even replied about the petrol diesel prices.
No, I'll come.
Gas
Madam,
prices.
You asked me so many questions.
Because you can't answer.
Examination center and my
I want my petrol, diesel, gas to go down.
I have only 1.5 minutes now.
Yeah. See, I'll go by one of the questions that she raised was around taxation, and the subsidy is not coming in the new tax regime. What the finance minister says here is that the faculties of our middle class is good enough to decide where to invest, what not to invest in. You know, so far we've been incentivizing that please go and invest in the LIC and you will get budget receipts. Leave it to the people. Let them decide.
But there is no
Give them
social
sufficient
security there.
incentive.
There is no social security
No,
there.
madam, there is.
The other
even
one, you
social
get the
security is
exemptions.
even
You
now.
have that money
You
coming
have-
in.
you-
Here, there is no
even
social security.
New social security schemes have been launched this
No,
time.
you launched,
Can
but
I
this
come in,
in
Sanket,
the
please?
other old taxation regime.
I don't
You
want to
have
please
exemptions
understand.
coming into you.
In the
There are
new tax-
exemptions coming.
See, this is what you said. I'll give you 1.5 minutes and you, everybody comes and how do I answer?
Keep speaking, I'm looking at you.
Okay, all right. See, what has happened is that, you know, there is a definite nudge that the old tax regime has to be eventually graduated out and the new and a simpler tax regime has to be the mainstay. It will be less on subsidies, less on all these, you know, frivolous schemes which a common man doesn't even know that you can avail benefits out of that.
Of course we know
Give
about
money
it.
in the hand of the
I know,
public.
everybody knows LICs, all get all those exemptions.
No, but then do you feel
The social
that-
security net they want
do
to
you feel
remove.
that
That
the
is what
social-
we...
that the reason why Rajat these schemes
No, sir.
came into existence was to provide that social net to the people?
No, sir. This was all babudam.
No, no, this is
you
budget
create
for the
these
rich.
obscure schemes which
is the
common people
fake
doesn't
Budget
come
for
to
the
know.
rich. This is
And
budget for the rich, not for the poor and the middle class. Budget for the rich. Why haven't you increased the?
Okay.
Why have you not increased taxes? You saw the disparity by the Oxfam. You should discuss the Oxfam
Okay,
report.
I think
1%
what
has
we'll
more
do
than
is,
40%.
in the very limited time that we
in
have,
the Congress era, in that era, everybody was equal. You know, everybody used to earn equal money. What a glorious days. Why don't you get it back, madam?
Yeah, we will get it back
Please
next
do
year.
that.
That is
you
what
know,
we are going to
at
do.
a time when
On
there
that
were no
note-
industrialists, there were no
on-
poor people. Everybody
Industrialists
was
got
one
money.
class. It was the
Everybody
finest
came out.
on that
commune.
note,
We
we
used to
come to
live
the
in a
end of the
commune
political
then,
half of
and
the
everybody
big
was
fight.
the same.
Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you so much.